Hello YouTube, I'm very excited to present the Sunshine Stretch X 220 racing frame that I designed and am now selling on ArmattanProductions.com. The link to the kit is in the description below. So without further ado, let's take a look at the frame. The arms are 4mm carbon and they are very stiff, as you can see. They don't flex at all and you're going to have a very hard time breaking these. The rest of the parts are 2mm carbon, so the top plate, sandwich plate, and the bottom plate. You can tell that there are some cutouts here on the bottom plate and these arrowheads on the top, and these are really just for aesthetic purposes and to get rid of a little bit of excess material that you don't need, and in the process save a little bit of weight. These slots that you see on the top plate on both sides are for running your battery strap through the plate if you want to use a top-mounted battery. This hole here in the back is for your SMA connector, and if you have like an SMA pigtail or a right angle connector, you can put it through here and have your antenna come out the top of the top plate. These two little slots are for a zip tie, again just to secure your SMA connector or your UFL if that's what you're using. The other thing I wanted to mention here for the top plate is that there's this big cutout here at the front. Let me rotate it around so you can see a little bit better. There we go. This big cutout here at the front is to give you plenty of space if you want to run your video camera up at high angles. I know that sometimes when you're running at high angles, maybe 45, 50, or even higher than that, your camera lens will poke through the top of the top plate, so I just wanted to give plenty of space for that. This is a racing frame after all, and racers do tend to run cameras at high angles. The next thing I wanted to say is that the arms are held in place with 3 screws each. I know that this is a little bit old-fashioned. There are frames out there that have like quick release mechanism, so to speak, or they only have 2 screws holding each arm in place, or I think some even have 1. And I don't know, the reason I decided to go with 3 screws is I just feel better knowing that there are more points, or that there are more safeguards in case one of the screws fall out, for example. If you lose a screw on your arm, even though it's highly unlikely, you'll still have another 2 holding it in. So again, that's a bit old-fashioned and it does add a little bit of weight, but if you really wanted to, I'm sure you could get rid of these outer screws when you're building it up and just use the inner screws, and these holes right now that don't have any screws in them are for your flight controller mounting. So let's see what else. Oh, the arms do lock in place fairly well. I designed them with no tolerancing whatsoever, so they fit and lock together very tightly. So you can tell I'm trying to move them and I can't. So the entire frame is very rigid. Let's see. Okay, so I used Armattan sunk nuts instead of lock nuts for this plate, and the reason for that is that I think they're just easier to work with overall. But they're a little bit more work to put in the first time, and you have to be careful that you don't strip them or anything like that. But once they're in, and if you're swapping an arm or something like that, you don't have to worry about grabbing the nut with pliers while you're loosening the screw with an Allen key, and it's just easier to do repairs on. I do want to say that you have to be careful when you're putting them in, and if you strip them and if you strip one of them and you have to take it out, don't twist it out with pliers. That's what I did with this one, and I damaged the hole in the plate, so I had to glue it in place. I had to super glue that in place. So if you have to take one of these out for whatever reason, just try to stick a pocket knife blade or something thin and stiff like that between the carbon and the nut, and just pop it off, and that shouldn't damage the hole that's in your plate. Let's see what else. Oh, the arms. So the arms, as I mentioned earlier, are 4mm carbon, and they are wide enough that you can run individual ESCs if that's what you want to do. I know for me that was a big deal. I am not a fan of 4-in-1 ESCs. I know that if one of them burns out, you don't technically have to replace the entire board. You can run an individual ESC to replace it, and then keep the other 3 on the all-in-one. But I don't know. I prefer the idea of having 4 separate ESCs rather than just one board. So a lot of racing frames out there have thinner arms that A, are more likely to break in a crash, and B, are not wide enough for individual ESCs. And I made these arms about as thin as I could make them, but still have enough room to accommodate individual ESCs. And I will be running the SpeedX HVs, which are fairly large actually, and they fit very well in here. So again, yeah, if you're one of those people that likes to run individual ESCs, this arm is perfect for that. The other key feature of this arm is the motor protection. The first prototype that I made did not have any kind of motor protection, and when I started flying it, I realized that if I crashed, if I skidded on concrete, if I hit a tree going at full speed, I was going to destroy my motor. And I started doing some research on motor protection, on what other people had used, and what works and what doesn't, and I decided to go with something similar to what's on the Floss and the Remix frame. I've heard that it's very effective, and since I've been flying with this sort of motor protection, because this is on the second version, or the second prototype that I made of this frame. This is the third version, the one that I'm selling. I've had some crashes. I've hit some branches. I've hit some trees. I've hit concrete, and I haven't broken anything. I haven't broken anything on the frame actually. Period. All I've done is just scuff up the edge of the carbon right there, so not really a big deal. The frame weighs 83 grams. I don't have a scale with me at home right now, so I did weigh it a few days ago at my internship. So I'm going to cut very quickly to the video where I did that. So let's take a look at that video. It's just that clip. Excuse me. It's just a few seconds long.
There is any possibility of doing a remote session?
Okay, so as you can see, it's not a super light frame. It's definitely not an ultralight, but it's also very respectable weight. My goal was to get it between 80 and 90 grams, and I'm very happy to say that it fell on the lower end of that spectrum, of that range. So it's definitely light enough for a racing frame. It's heavy enough that you can use it for freestyle as well, and it doesn't feel airy when you fly it or anything like that. It doesn't feel too light. It definitely has enough weight that it has inertia to do like freestyle moves, or to just throw yourself around a corner. So yeah, that's something that I'm very happy about, the weight, that it's fairly low but not too low. What else did I want to say? Okay, this might be a deal breaker for some people, and it's the fact that the frame is meant to accommodate a micro camera. The reason for that is you can't actually run a full-size camera on this. Don't get me wrong, but you don't have enough space at the front to keep it completely protected inside the frame. In other words, your lens will be sticking out of the front of the quad, and if you have a hard crash, you may break the lens. Whereas with a micro camera, you're much less likely to do so, because the lens is completely protected by the standoff and the top of the frame. And I am planning to turn this into a flyable quad over the next week or so. But in the meantime, I wanted to show this, this is the second prototype I made for myself. And then again, this is version 3, which I'm selling. You can see what I mean about the camera protection. Well, I have this 3D printed TPU mount here that just slides over the standoff. You can I found this on Thingiverse, and I'm pretty sure Brain 3D also has them. If you don't have access to a 3D printer, you can buy them on Brain 3D for about $4 for a pair of two. So yeah, if you look at it here from the side, you can tell that the camera lens is pretty much completely protected by the standoff and by the top plate. So, you know, the micro cameras are almost as good in terms of image quality and performance as the full-size cameras, and they're also 10 grams lighter. So I really don't see a reason not to run a micro camera. But if for whatever reason you want to run a full-size camera and you want to get this frame, just be aware of the fact that your lens will be exposed on the front of the quad. Yeah, the last point I want to mention is that the body of the quad, although it is fairly small, you have enough space to build everything up here without having to build too tightly. Let me bring this quad over again. So on this build, I have I have my flight controller, I have my VTX here, I have the FlySky XXV receiver, which is not a small receiver. I have a capacitor back here. Again, the micro camera in the front and the 4 individual ESCs on the arms. Everything fits here, without being too squished up. So it's not too hard to build. It is tight, but it's not so tight that you're going crazy over shortening wires and just scrunching up everything in there. So that was one of the important things for me when I was designing this frame. The main reason I set out to design it was when I was looking for a new race frame. Nothing on the market really met all of my needs. I was a bit nitpicky about certain things. Definitely wanted my arms to be wide enough to run individual ESCs. I didn't want to have such a small body that all I was going to have space for was my stack, and everything else was just going to be kind of like shoved in there. I wanted, and this may sound weird, but I wanted individual arms. I did not want a unibody bottom plate, because if I snapped an arm, that's the first thing that's going to break, and just paying for an entirely new bottom plate to replace one broken arm just seemed like a waste of money and time also, because you pretty much have to strip all the electronic components off and rebuild it. So when I started this back in November, I intended to use it mostly for myself, but as the project went along, I realized that it might be something that other people might be interested in as well. So I just wanted to put a video out there, just showing some parts of it. I hope you're able to appreciate the frame and the work that I put into designing it. And thanks for watching the video. Please feel free to contact me at josehein@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments. Any feedback, whether it's positive or negative, is appreciated. All I want to do is just make this better, not just for myself, but for all pilots out there. So once again, yeah, thanks for watching the video. Please check out the kit on Armattan Productions. And if you're in the market for a new racing frame, give this a thought. You might like it. So look forward to the next video. Hopefully in the next week or two, I'll put out some DVR footage of this frame once I get the components from the prototype over to this one. I'm planning to do some waterproofing in the interim, because it keeps raining every day here, and I really want to go out and fly in spite of the rain. So yeah, enough rambling. This is the Sunshine Stretch, and thanks for watching.